supplies that you're going to need to make these wooden ornaments is, of course, the wooden slices. You can get these locally on Facebook Marketplace, on Amazon, or from craft stores like Michael's or Joann's. I like to use an assortment of paint, so whether you're using the paint from the dollar store or Walmart or a higher quality paint, my favorite paint to use is the stuff I get from Home Depot. So if you go to Home Depot here in Canada, there's a whole bunch of swatches. You can just take any swatch you want, and for around $5, they'll make you the containers like this with the different paint colors matching perfectly the colors that you've selected. You're also going to need some vinyl. So I'm going to be using the removable vinyl, the tropical sampler that we got in the last Thanksgiving mystery box. So I love using anything that I don't plan on using on the wall as a stencil when it's removable. A few other things that I like to use whenever I'm making ornaments but are not necessary, you can do this with paint, are some different paint pens. So you can either use a permanent marker, some cheaper paint pens like these ones I bought on Amazon. You can get Posca pens at Michael's, but again, that's not necessary. It just really helps. So what you're really looking to get and is necessary is called gesso. So this is clear gesso. It makes it so that the lines stay crisp under the stencil, and I never paint without it. So 100% essential to make ornaments today: wooden slices, some gesso, any color of paint that you choose. Today I think we're going to do white and blue, and some vinyl. You can use permanent or removable. Today I have the removable sampler. I like using bright colors that are easy to see through the paint, so I'll use either the pink, the purple, or the blue from that sampler. I almost forgot the most important part: paintbrushes. So I absolutely love these brushes that have the tapered tip for making circles. I'll show you how I make them. I am by no means a professional, but this is my way to make wooden ornaments with brushes with tapered tips. So you're going to want to start off by usually painting first, since it does take a little bit of time to dry. You'll want it completely dry before you apply the stencil. So I like to use a different brush for all the colors. That's why I have so many, but you can use just one brush and rinse in between each. That's not a problem. So I like to completely saturate the brush with paint. And then in the center, you can leave just a little bit extra and really dab around to get the brush filled with the paint. So always start from the edge, and keep in mind, if you do have a lot of paint on it like I do, you see it dripping off, it will pass further than the bristles a little bit. So you just want to pay attention to that whenever you push down, you're giving yourself a little bit of a border. And I like to turn the wooden slice at the same time as I'm turning the paintbrush, but I've noticed there are a few ways that seem to go better. I really like to go up here in the right and then down to the left. So I tend to just keep turning it so I can keep redoing that same stroke. After a couple, you can find that you can do the entire piece in one stroke, but you can go slow and start slow with just little pieces. Now it's not perfectly centered, so anywhere there's some extra paint, I'm just going to go back around and change those lines a little bit or extend them out. It's hard to get it perfectly centered on something that's not a perfect circle, and it is handmade, so have patience with yourself in that sense. But this paint is really amazing. I like that it's wall paint, so it covers pretty well the first go. And it is very affordable. If you've ever been to Michael's, the paint can get pretty pricey. But like I said, these swatches, this whole container is $5, which is the same price I paid for a little container like this in black in retrospect. So it really is a good deal. Most painting stores offer that. It's not just Home Depot if you don't have a Home Depot where you are. Now, any extra you can see here in the center, I don't want that there. It will show up after. It's not going to dry in. So you can either pick it up with your brush and move it back around a little bit, or just pick it up and wipe the excess off. I'll do the same thing with the same color. We'll speed it up a little bit this time. So you're really trying to keep that fluid motion all along the sides. I'll put a little extra there in the center. And if you notice, I'm really pressing the brush bristles down and fanning them out. That just helps keep that nice tapered end center for a perfect circle, or a smooth circle, I should say. Again, I'm just picking up any excess around the outer edges. Anything that you'd like to extend a little bit, now's your chance as well. Let's make a couple white ones for our snowmen. And this is all paint I bought last season too, so it really did keep very well. Any of these little hard pieces we can just remove. So the brush does pull the paint a lot better when it is completely covered in paint versus just a new brush. So I always take a little bit of extra time to mix that in. There's a little bit of excess all around the border, so I'm just going to go, now that my brush is dry, and lightly touch it to remove it. If you're finding that you don't have a really steady hand with the brush, I find it's easier to just keep the brush in one spot instead of moving it and move the circle back and forth. But I use a little bit of a combination of both depending on what I'm doing. Since we're making stencils with this project, I'm going to delete the entire right-hand side here with the guide that says for layered projects. So these are the different stencils that I have in this project for you to use. So depending on which ones you want to use and the size of your wooden rounds, you're going to want to make that adjustment here. All of my wooden rounds were under 3 inches. So I'm going to make sure that I have an assortment of sizes so they're all around the same size. The stencil is just a guide. This piece won't cut out. You can make them all the same color. They don't have to be separate colors. That just makes it easier and will save your vinyl. We can even make a few extra. I really like this one, the Let It Snow one. Just trying to make it so there's a little bit more space between each shape to cut out. Be mirrored since this is removable vinyl, and just continue to cut. And now you're going to want to remove all the insides of the stencils, leaving the circle shape intact. And apply a thin coat of invisible gesso or transparent gesso. I'm going to apply a thin coat of transparent gesso, Once it dries, we'll apply a second coat and then we'll be ready to paint. While the final two dry, we can start painting these 4 ornaments here that are completely dry. So after 2 thin coats of the gesso, I like to add any kind of acrylic paint you have, either the stuff from the dollar store or the samplers that I show from Home Depot or a paint store. Just depends on what color I'm looking for and what I have on hand. I find you sometimes get it a little bit thicker if you're patting it versus just stroking it. Some colors, especially red, I find take a second coat to get them less transparent. I really like the way this ornament comes out whenever it's white. So like last year, we're going to do this one in black and white again. I'm not pressing as firmly as I did with the gesso. With the gesso, I was really trying to make sure that it got everywhere where the stencil touches the wood just to stop this paint from spreading out. But with the paint, I'm more just trying to pat it in everywhere because I don't want it to bleed any more than it has to. You can also use sponge brushes, but I'm a big fan of just changing the brush out. And sponge brushes I find get dry in between waiting. I don't like to wash them. I'll just sit it in like a water bottle with some water until I can wash them afterwards. But with the sponge brush, it's hard to do that. And last but not least, the Charlie Brown one. So this one has the smallest writing and is always one of my favorite ornaments. It's definitely worth it for the extra time it takes to weed. We'll take the wooden drill bit and we can make holes right through the wood. Make sure to leave enough room at the top that it doesn't crack. To just put the final touches on if I'm going to add anything with the back of the paintbrush for some little snowflakes.